Hello, everyone. This is Ian with Immigration Finder, and today we're going to be going over a time blocking and productivity training. This can be used for anything, but we do work with immigration law firms, so that's the point of this. So, for the next bit, we're going to be going over a few things about psychology, why you get distracted, a few other things such as techniques to actually doing this. Then we'll do a quick recap afterwards, and most of all, take one of these if you when you get to the end of this video, and really commit to it if you want to get more done. So here we go. So first thing we're going to talk about is the availability misweighing bias. So overall, like you get distracted for a reason. And human beings normally do the wrong thing for themselves. Example, eating fast food instead of healthy food. So we're all programmed to do the easiest and most available thing. In work, this can translate to projects that are longer and are more difficult to get put off because you want to do the easier thing or the thing that makes you feel good. And this can also translate to doing things that make you feel good instead of things that really matter. So ways to avoid negative effects of this, put your most important tasks in front of you and make them readily available. So beginning of the day, you generally have more focus and willpower, so you can focus on them first. And plan what's important and stick to it. So that's something. So there's something also called the Pareto principle. Origin story, Vilfredo Pareto noticed that 80% of the pea pod harvest from his garden came from 20% of his pea plants. So based on Pareto's observation, he then calculated that 20% of the people in Italy owned 80% of the country's wealth. This particular way of telling a story is told by Brian Tracy, but this is the 80-20 principle, very common thing if you're in business, and really it's true. And so the Pareto principle states that 20% of your tasks will create 80% of your results, and the opposite of that, vice versa, is 80% of your tasks will produce 20% of the results. So this is true in every area of life. 20% of people have 80% of the wealth, for example, and 80% of your progress will come from 20% of your tasks, which is why productivity is really important. And 20% of your progress will come from 80% of your tasks. So that's, which one would you rather do? Would you rather see 80% progress or 20% progress? It's a decision to make. So multitasking. So this term was invented because computer systems would do things in succession so quickly that it appeared they were doing multiple things at once. So it can take 23 minutes to resume concentration after being distracted and switching tasks. On a side note, on these slides, which will be shared with this video, if for whatever reason are just watching this video and don't have that, feel free to email support@immigrationfinder.com and ask for them. There was a study done by UC Irvine that said that it takes 23 minutes and 15 seconds to resume concentration after being distracted. So that can be as simple as checking a text message, answering a question from someone. You'll scroll into the different screen and check email quickly when you're in the midst of something. So working on multiple things at once at the same time lead to not knowing how long things will take and a sense of overwhelm because you're not going to have control. So task switching is different than multitasking also. So switching between things is different than working on multiple things at once. So next we're going to talk about time blocking. So plan parts of your day ahead of time for certain activities and stick to it. There's a lot of apps for this. Feel free to Google it. There's certain ways to time block. Plan your lunches and breaks and self-care time. There's actually been a lot of studies that, a lot of times the more you take breaks, as long as you have productive planning, the more you'll get done. Brain activity really dies if you're sitting in front of a computer. And plan how you will start and end the day. So generally, you might not have control over how you, how stuff goes in the middle of the day. But generally, the very beginning of the day and the very end of the day, be it in your personal life, when you wake up, when you go to bed, and the end of the day at work, and then the beginning of the day at work, you generally can control how those end. So really focus on it because they're critical. It's how you start, it's how you finish. And then time blocking allows you to focus, and you know when to ask for help because you see the amount of time and tasks you need to complete. Much like we talked about earlier with not multitasking, you can time block and have a clear estimate of how long things will take. And 1 minute of planning saves 10 minutes of execution. And review your time block at the end of the day and plan the next day based on how it went. So this is a really good thing for you to do because like when you actually go through your time block and then check everything, you can plan out, all of your different stuff, but you can also see that, hey, maybe something took you 45 minutes instead of 30, or maybe when you had focused work, something actually took that. I actually had someone that worked for me at one point that I thought something would take them 2 hours. It took them 30 minutes. When I looked at the report they sent me of their time, because they were billing me by the hour, and then I realized that, hey, I'm not very good at this. And that really kind of changed my perspective. And then set aside time for planning tasks. Kind of like when you tell yourself, you don't have time to clean your room or your office, and then you end up, every time you lose something, it takes 30 minutes to comb through and find it. So anxiety for ignoring things is an important concept. When you focus on something and become single-minded, you ignore other things. Ignoring other tasks can lead to a sense of anxiety around other things not being done. This is normal. And so just kind of get used to it. You're going to have a pit in your stomach when you first start focusing, because focus and keep consistent with getting things done. Being productive will lead to less stress and more confidence in your work. And this doesn't mean ignoring other things entirely, only for certain blocks of time. And one other note on this side is, not time blocking and being unproductive is very stimulating. Actually, changing browser windows, checking your messages, that you get these serotonin and dopamine rushes in your brain. So although it may not feel as stimulating to not have that, when you're really productive and get stuff done, it can come across as a little boring. So just remember that anxiety is not necessarily your friend. So how to get started? So plan your work before you start. Write out what you work on and then work on it. So start with a little plan. And then you can do this the day before, but even when you sit down, you just make a list of it. There's a bunch of different apps for this. You can use a Word document, spreadsheet. We use Slack canvases a lot, piece of paper, that's fine. There's also the Pomodoro technique. So the Pomodoro technique is you work for 25 minutes, take a break for 5 minutes, and then feel free to test different time intervals and use different time intervals for different tasks. And so that's something, there are a ton of Pomodoro apps if you want to look them up. So really common thing. There's a bunch of them. This is also a trademarked thing. I do not own the trademark on Pomodoro technique. This is just, I'm just sharing it. So time block your calendar, the week and day ahead. Communicate with your teammates when you need to focus. And so let people know when you're working, just be like, hey, I'm going to be working on this for 45 minutes. I don't want to be disturbed. Is there anything you need beforehand? This isn't about, spitefully being productive and, pushing the world out or anything. It's about you getting stuff done, which is good for you and your group. So a good thing to ask if someone asks you for something, how urgent is this task? And ask yourself, you can ask others. Let's say someone asks you to do something, they actually don't need it immediately. They just happen to ask you for it. And ask, what's the one thing such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? This is actually a line out of a book called The One Thing, which is a great book. It's written by Gary Keller, the guy that founded Keller Williams. Good thing to check out. And write out all your tasks and put a star or type of indicator next to the most important ones and work on the most important ones first. And test techniques to see what works for you. And that's really kind of it. So conclusion, don't beat yourself up for getting distracted. No point in doing that. Communicate when you get distracted with your manager or whoever you're working with. And then, and also, if you're working alone, communicate with yourself. It's actually, why did I get distracted? Why did I want to check my phone? Am I stressed about something else and it's affecting my work? Just be honest with yourself. And commit to testing a certain productivity technique for a certain amount of time or tasks. There's a lot of them in this presentation, so don't feel like you have to go through every single one. So this may not be easy or natural at first, just like anything. The first time you rode a bike, it might have been a little bit difficult. You had training wheels, that stuff. And then 1 minute of planning saves 10 minutes of execution. And work on one thing at a time for a structured amount of time. So, hey, I'm going to work on this one thing for 20 minutes, and then that's the result. And then start time blocking. That's the biggest thing. So overall, that's the presentation that we went through. So the things we covered are the availability misweighing bias. So people psychologically get distracted and go for the easiest thing. The Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle, multitasking. It could take 23 minutes to resume concentration after being distracted or switching tasks. Time blocking, so structure out your calendar, plan your breaks, plan that. And this is also how you can plan being done by a certain amount of time so you can really go enjoy your life. So anxiety from ignoring things, you're going to have that pit in your stomach. Obviously, the first time you change anything, it's a little different. Obviously, you have your phone. You're not checking that while you're working. You're doing certain things. Really focus. And this time blocking can also be for your personal life as well. Let's say you want a time block to be like, hey, I'm not going to get distracted. I'm solely going to spend time with my kids or my spouse or my whatever. It's your family or whatever it is. You just want to be focused and centered. Maybe it's time for yourself. You're like, hey, I'm just going to go to the park, walk around. I'm not going to check my phone, and that's it. Then how to get started? Good thing. So these are questions to ask yourself and how to get started, then a quick conclusion. So if you need anything, and if you own an immigration firm, feel free to email hiring or support@immigrationfinder.com, and then we'll be able to help you out from there. Thank you.